Hi everyone, today we're going to be looking at expressing one number as a percentage of another, as well as finding the percentage of something as well. So if we want to express one quantity as a percentage of another, that's usually something like 14 out of 20, right? Or like 10 out of 35, so on, so on. The way that we do this is we write 14 out of 20 as a fraction. So we would do 14 over 20. And then because we want to convert this into a percentage, we're going to multiply by 100 over 1. So if I cross cancel here, this would be a 5 and this would be a 1. So now we've got 14 times 5 over 1 times 1, which is 75%. Okay, so write it as a fraction and then multiply that by 100 over 1. Now, finding a certain percent of a quantity, so like 50% of something, etc., we're going to do something similar. We're going to write our percent as a fraction, so 20 over 100. And then remember from fractions that of just means times. So we're going to times this by 80. And we're going to put 80 over 1 because we need that to be improper. Now, if I do some cross-cancelling here, I could divide this by 20 and this by 20 to make those 5 and 4. And then I could simplify this fraction here by dividing both of these by 5. So we end up with 4 times 4, which is 16. So 20% of 80 is 16. Now, the other thing that I'd like to really point out here is that percentages are actually reversible. And what I mean by that, and this is good if you ever have a really tricky one to work with, but what I mean by that is that 20% of 80 is actually the same as 80% of 20, okay? And we're going to work through it just so you can see that. So 80% of 20, I'm going to do 80 over 100, and I'm going to times that by 20 over 1. And we're going to do some cross-cancelling while we can, so I will divide both of these by 20. And then I can simplify 80 over 5 to 16 and 1. So now I'm left with 16 over 1, which is 16. So percentages are reversible. So if you ever get something tricky like, 12% of 50, that's actually the same as 50% of 12, which is a lot easier to do. So you can reverse them if that's going to help you out. All right. Now, feel free to pause the video here to work through these problems, but I'll also go through them. Now, 34 out of 40 as a percentage, I'm going to write 34 out of 40 as a fraction, multiplied by 100 over 1. We'll do some cross-cancelling here, divide those both by 20, and I have 34 times 5, which is 170 over 2, and 170 divided by 2 is 85%. Okay, so that is 85%. Now, 12 out of 25, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do 12 over 25 times 100 over 1. Do some cross-cancelling here, divide both of these by 25. And then we end up with 12 times 4, which is 48, over 1. So that ends up being 48%. Okay? Pardon me. Now, 40 centimetres as a percentage of 2 metres. We have to be really careful here because those are in two separate units. So I'm going to change this 200 metres into 200 centimetres because that way they're both the same unit. Then I can do 40 out of 200 times 100 over 1. And that's going to, if I cross-cancel these, give me 40 over 2, which is 20%. Which makes a lot more sense that if we were to make this 40 over 2 because we know centimetres are smaller than metres. Now this one here, I'm going to do 13 over 30, times that by 100 over 1. I can do some cross-cancelling here, and we end up with 130 over 3, which will end up giving us 43.3 recurring percent. Okay? 18 as a percentage of 45. That would be 18 over 45. times 100 over 1. If I do some simplifying here, I could make this a 2 and this a 5 because they both can be divided by 9. And then this can be further cross-cancelled here as well. So I just end up with 2 times 20, which is 40%. Okay. Then 60 cents as a percentage of $5. Once again, make these both the same unit. I'm going to have 60 over 500 times 100 over 1. Cross cancel here a bit. We can divide both of those by 100. And then I can simplify that 60 over 5 by dividing both by 5. So now I have 12 times 1 over 1 times 1, which is 12%. Okay. Now if we try to do some the other way, and once again, feel free to pause the video here while we do this, okay? But if let's say I wanted to find 25% of $40, okay? And like I said, feel free to pause the video here if you like. And then if I wanted to find 8% of $43. So this second one you're probably going to need a calculator for, and that's okay. All right. This first one, that's going to be equal to 25 over 100 times 40 over 1. Then we can do some simplification. So if I divide this by 20, I'm going to get 2 and 5. And then if I simplify that first fraction and divide both of these by 5, I'd get 5 and 1. So 25% of 40 would be 5 times 2 over 1 times 1, which would be 10. So 25% of $40 is $10. Now, 8% of $43, same idea here. I'm going to do 8 over 100 times 43 over 1. There's no nice simplification here. So I'm just going to have to do 8 times 43, which is 344 over 100. And then obviously move that decimal point to make that into an actual money value is going to be $3.44.